He called me a disgrace in my daughter's house. My son-in-law looked at me like I was filth tracked in on his expensive shoes. They thought I was just a washed-up old mechanic, an embarrassment they could throw away. They were about to find out that even old engines can still roar, and sometimes I don't just fix things, I tear them down. My name is George Miller. If you're listening to this, subscribe to the channel and let me know where you're watching from. It helps to know I'm not the only one who's felt invisible. Let me tell you about the night my world broke, and how I started putting it back together. The grease never leaves you. Not really. It settles deep into the lines of my palms. It lives under my nails. 30 years I've owned my auto shop on the edge of town. 30 years of fixing what's broken. It's honest work, hard work. I looked at my hands. Rough, calloused, stained. They were the hands of a mechanic, and I used to be proud of that. My late wife, Sarah, loved these hands. She didn't see the dirt. She saw our history. She'd take them in hers, her skin soft against mine. George, she'd say, these hands built our life. Brick by brick, bolt by bolt. I missed Sarah every single day. The ache in my chest was a constant, heavy weight. When she was here, the world made sense. She was the glue. When she died 5 years ago, things started falling apart. We had Emily, our daughter. She is the light of my life, the spitting image of her mother's kindness, or she used to be. Since Sarah passed, a gap opened up between us. It started small, just a crack in the foundation. I tried to reach her, but something was pulling her away. That something was Kevin. When Emily married him 2 years ago, that crack became a canyon, and I was standing on the wrong side, shouting into the wind. Kevin works in finance downtown. He's all sharp suits and expensive haircuts. He uses big words, words designed to make you feel small. Liquidity, leverage, aesthetic. He never liked me. That's the plain, unvarnished truth. And the feeling was mutual. His hatred wasn't loud. It wasn't arguments. It was colder, quieter. It was the way he looked at my truck in his driveway, like it was diseased. The way he'd ask Emily if I was comfortable in their guest room. Comfortable. Like I was a stray dog they'd taken in out of pity. And his parents, Richard and Susan, were worse. They were the blueprints for Kevin's arrogance. Richard looked at my shop as if it were a junkyard, a blight on the town. Susan wrinkled her nose when I talked about engine blocks or carburetors. They hated me because I didn't fit. I didn't belong in their world of crystal glasses, stock portfolios, and manicured lawns. I was the blue-collar embarrassment, the grease stain on their perfect white carpet, and they never let me forget it. The invitation arrived a week ago, printed on paper so thick it felt like a ceramic tile, expensive. Cold, a formal dinner at Kevin and Emily's new house, a massive, sprawling place in the gated community on the hill. It was a house built, not for comfort, but for show. A monument to Kevin's ego. I stared at the fancy script. My stomach tightened. I knew what this was. It wasn't a family dinner, it was a performance. And I had a role to play. The role of the supportive father, the respectable patriarch. They wanted me there, but they didn't want me. They wanted a version of me that didn't exist. A version that wasn't stained. Emily called me right after I got it. Her voice, usually so bright, sounded tight, strained, like a wire pulled too taut. "Dad, you have to come," she pleaded. "I'll be there, sweetheart." "You know I will," I said. I tried to inject a cheerfulness I didn't feel. "It's really important for Kevin," she continued. "Vital, actually. Vital." That was one of Kevin's words. I knew this was serious. But I didn't know the whole truth yet. The real betrayal was still waiting in the shadows. "And Dad?" Emily paused. I could hear the hesitation, the fear of asking too much. "Please, try to be on time." Kevin gets so stressed about punctuality. Stressed, another word for angry. Controlling. "And maybe wear the new blue suit," she added quietly. The new blue suit, the one I bought for her wedding. It felt stiff, unnatural, like a costume. I hated that suit. I hated what it represented pretending. "Of course, honey," I agreed. I always agreed. For her, I remembered the day she married him. Her best friend, Anna, pulled me aside at the reception. Anna was always blunt, a lawyer with a sharp eye for deceit. "George, watch him," Anna had whispered. gripping my arm. He's manipulative. He isolates her. I don't trust him. His numbers don't add up. I dismissed it then. I thought Anna was just being overprotective. I thought Kevin was just ambitious. I was wrong. I realized that now. Anna saw the thirsts I was blind to. Kevin says they are hosting a very important guest tonight. Emily had continued on the phone, her voice dropping to a whisper. A potential investor for his new company. Mrs. Hanover. She's a legend in the industry. A legend. Great. More pressure. His parents are frantic. He's on edge. This deal could change everything for us, Dad. Everything. Everything. I knew what that meant. It meant I had to be invisible. Silent. Perfect. I had to be someone else. And I was already exhausted from the effort. The day of the dinner arrived. Gray and heavy. The sky looked bruised. A cold rain started around noon and hadn't let up. It was the kind of rain that soaked right through your coat, into your bones. I closed the shop early, around 4 p.m. The silence in the garage felt heavy, ominous. I went home. The house was quiet, too quiet. Sarah's presence was everywhere, her favorite mug on the counter, her shawl draped over the armchair. I went to the bathroom. I spent nearly an hour scrubbing my hands, heavy-duty soap, the orange stuff with the grit. My skin felt raw, red, but the shadows of grease remained. They always remained. They were part of me. I dug the blue suit out of the closet. It hung there, accusingly. I put it on. The fabric scratched against my skin. The collar felt too tight, like a noose closing around my neck. I looked in the mirror. I saw a tired 58-year-old man. A man pretending. A fraud in a cheap suit. I picked up the small framed photo of Sarah from the dresser. Her smile warmed me, but it also broke my heart. Wish me luck, Sarah, I whispered. My voice cracked. I'm walking into the lion's den. I knew what she would say. Be yourself, George. That's who I love. But tonight, being myself was the last thing they wanted. I grabbed my keys and stepped out into the miserable weather. The wind whipped the rain sideways. It felt like needles against my face. I got into my old, reliable pickup truck. It was clean. I'd spent hours detailing it, but it was still a work truck. Scratches on the bumper, dents in the tailgate. It didn't belong in that gated community. It belonged at the shop, just like me. The drive was supposed to be 40 minutes, but in this rain, at least an hour, maybe more. The wipers squeaked back and forth, a losing battle against the deluge. The highway was slick, oil and water mixed under the streetlights, blurry halos of light everywhere. Traffic was crawling, bumper to bumper, red taillights stretching into the distance. A river of frustration. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white. Anxiety churned in my gut, a cold, heavy feeling. I was already cutting it close. The thought of walking in late, facing the cold stares, the judgment, my chest tightened. I couldn't breathe. Just get through the evening, George. Smile, nod, stay invisible. Don't be you. I thought about Kevin, about his desperation. A few months ago, an eviction notice appeared on my shop door. My landlord, Mr. Peterson, a stern but usually fair man, looked worried when I called him. Your rent is late, George. 3 months late, Peterson had said, his voice gruff. I was confused. I always paid on time. Kevin had offered to handle my books, to help me modernize, to take the burden off me. Kevin took care of it. He said it was a banking error. He apologized profusely. He seemed so sincere. He showed me transfer statements. But now, sitting in this traffic, knowing how vital this investor was, I started to wonder, was Kevin financially stable? Or was he drowning? And was he pulling me down with him? The thought chilled me more than the rain. I was about halfway there, on a quieter stretch of the highway. The part that wound up towards the hills, where the rich people lived. The rain was coming down harder now. A solid sheet of water. Then I saw it. On the narrow shoulder of the highway. An expensive-looking sedan. Dark gray. Sleek. It was tilted awkwardly. Steam curled up from the hood, mixing with the rain. Hazard lights blinking weakly, almost apologizing. It looked helpless. Standing next to the car was a woman. She was struggling with a small, flimsy umbrella. The wind was winning the battle. She looked to be around my age, maybe 60. She was peering helplessly at a completely flat tire. Her elegantly styled gray hair was plastered to her face. She looked utterly stranded, lost. My foot eased off the gas. My first instinct, the instinct born of anxiety, screamed at me. "Keep driving, George. You're late. You're wearing the blue suit." Emily's voice echoed in my head. "Please, Dad. Be on time." Kevin's voice followed. "Priority, George. Priority. If I stopped, I'd be late. I'd be dirty. I'd ruin the image." Emily was desperate to project. Kevin would use it as proof. Proof that I was incompetent, unreliable, a mess. This was the perfect excuse for him to cut me out completely. But leaving her there, stranded in this dangerous storm, it was an accident waiting to happen. I looked at the woman again. She looked so small against the storm, so vulnerable. Sarah's voice whispered in my memory. "Always help George. Always." I couldn't live with myself if I drove past. I couldn't live with the kind of person who valued a dinner party over someone's safety. I signaled and pulled my truck onto the shoulder. The gravel crunched under my tires. I took a deep breath. This was it. The night was officially ruined before it even began. I stepped out of the truck. The rain hit me instantly. Cold, sharp, soaking my blue suit trousers in seconds. The wind ripped at my jacket. The cold seeped into my bones. "Having some trouble, ma'am?" I called out. The noise of the rain and the traffic was deafening. She turned, startled, her face etched with distress. Relief washed over her when she saw me. "Oh, thank goodness. Yes," she shouted over the wind. "My tire blew out. I think I hit something in the road." She held up her phone helplessly. "And my phone is dead." I tried to call for help, but it just went black. She looked completely overwhelmed. She was dressed for a party, not a crisis. "Let me take a look," I offered, walking towards the front of her car. I knew this was going to be bad. I surveyed the damage. It wasn't just a flat. The sidewall was shredded, torn to pieces, and the rim itself, bent, dented deep, and the steam from the hood. The engine had overheated. This wasn't a quick fix. This was a disaster. "This is a tough one," I said, shouting over the wind. "The spare might not sit right with this bent rim. We need to be careful." "Oh dear," she whispered. Her voice trembled. "I have a very important meeting tonight. A dinner engagement. I simply cannot be late. It's crucial, important." The same words Emily used. "I know the feeling," I muttered. If she only knew. I went back to my truck. I grabbed my toolbox. Heavy, solid, familiar. My tools felt comforting in my hands. This was my world. Grease and metal, problems and solutions. I was wearing my good shoes, the ones for weddings and funerals. They were now sinking into the thick mud on the shoulder, ruined. I didn't care. I had a job to do. I got to work. The rain was relentless. It dripped off my nose, down the back of my collar, plastering the suit jacket to my skin. The blue fabric was turning black with water and grime. The lug nuts were rusted tight. They hadn't been turned in years. I had to put my back into it, using all my strength. My muscles strained. My breath came in short gasps. This was taking too long. Way too long. I thought about calling a tow truck, waiting, but it might take hours in this weather. The highways were jammed. She was desperate, and I had the skills to fix it. Now, I had to finish what I started. That's what I do. I fix things, even when it costs me everything. I struggled with the jack. The ground was uneven, muddy. It kept sinking, slipping dangerously. I needed something flat, stable. I searched the ditch nearby, found a broken piece of plywood, waterlogged, slimy. I wedged it under the jack, stabilized it. It took me nearly 30 minutes just to get the car lifted safely. My muscles were burning. I was breathing heavily. My heart pounded in my chest. Not just from the effort, from the realization of how late I was getting. Grease and mud splashed up onto my shirt cuffs. The front of my jacket. I looked like I'd been digging a grave. Maybe I was. The woman, whose name I learned was Margaret, tried to hold the umbrella over me, but the wind kept whipping it around, useless. "Please, you're getting absolutely soaked," she said. Her voice was full of genuine concern, not pity. Concern. "You're ruining your suit." "The suit will dry," I said, grunting, as I pulled the heavy, ruined tire off. "It weighed a ton. Let's just worry about getting you back on the road." I didn't tell her the suit was already ruined. The suit didn't matter. Getting her safe mattered. I managed to mount the spare tire. The donut, small and weak. As I suspected, the bent rim made it difficult. It didn't sit flush. I tightened the nuts carefully, making sure it was secure, but it wasn't perfect. "You'll have to drive slow on this," I told her, lowering the jack. "No more than 40 miles an hour, and get that rim replaced tomorrow. First thing." But the tire was only half the problem. Before closing the hood, I checked the engine. The coolant reservoir was nearly empty. Bone dry. The overheating was serious. The engine could have seized up. Luckily, I always kept extra coolant in a funnel in my truck, a mechanic's habit. I filled it up. The sweet smell of antifreeze mixing with the metallic scent of the rain. That's when everything went wrong. Again. As I tightened the radiator cap, my wrench slipped. The metal was slick with rain and grease. It slammed my knuckles against the hot engine block. Pain shot up my arm. Hot, sharp pain. Burning. I hissed through my teeth. I pulled my hand back, instinctively. I knew I was bleeding. I looked down, blood mixed with the grease and the rain. The skin was torn open. Raw. Now I was injured, filthy, and incredibly late. This night was turning into a complete catastrophe. A nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I tightened the cap securely. My hands were now completely coated. Grime, grease, mud, blood. I looked like a monster from a horror movie. Finally, after nearly an hour of hard labor in the pouring rain, the job was done. I was exhausted. I leaned against the side of her car, catching my breath. The rain felt good on my burning knuckles. I looked down at myself, drenched, head to toe. My blue suit, the one Emily insisted I wear, destroyed. I looked like I had been wrestling a bear in an oil pit. There was no way I could go to the dinner now. No way. Margaret looked at me, her eyes wide with gratitude. She seemed to be a woman of composure, elegant, refined, but her relief was palpable. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, her voice steady now, stronger. "You are a lifesaver. Everyone else just drove right past." I was starting to panic. "It's what I do," I said, wiping my hands on a rag from my toolbox. It did little good. It just smeared the grease around. "Please, you must let me pay you," she insisted. She reached for her purse on the passenger seat. It was expensive leather. "For your time. And for your suit." "It's ruined." "No, ma'am," I said firmly. My pride wouldn't allow it. I wasn't a charity case. Helping someone out shouldn't come with a price tag. "Just promise me you'll drive slow and that's spare." Money didn't fix everything. It certainly wouldn't fix the mess I was in. She hesitated, looking at me with a sharp, observant gaze, like she was sizing me up, assessing me, seeing past the grime. "You are a very kind man," she said slowly. "A rare quality. What is your name?" "George Miller." "Thank you, George Miller. I won't forget this." I had a feeling she meant it. I watched her get into her car. The engine turned over smoothly. A quiet purr. She gave me one last wave and pulled back onto the highway. Slowly, carefully. I stood there for a moment, watching her taillights disappear into the rain. I felt a strange sense of accomplishment. I had done the right thing. But that feeling didn't last long. I got back into my truck. The leather seats squelched underneath me. Water dripped from my hair onto the dashboard. I turned the heater on full blast, but I was chilled to the bone, a cold that had nothing to do with the rain. I checked the time on the dashboard clock. The glowing green numbers mocked me. I was an hour and a half late. My heart sank. The dread returned, heavier, colder. This was going to be bad. Very bad. I drove the rest of the way to the gated community. My stomach twisted into knots. The drive felt agonizingly long. An eternity. I kept looking at my hands on the steering wheel. The filth embedded under my nails. The blood still oozing from my knuckles. I tried to rub the grease off my jacket. Useless. I just made it worse. I thought about calling Emily, warning her. But what could I say? I ruined the suit. I'm late. I look like a homeless person. No. I had to face the music. I had to see my daughter. When I arrived at the gates, the security guard looked at me. He was a young guy, crisp uniform. He looked at my old truck with open suspicion. Like I was there to rob the place. Can I help you, sir? He asked. His tone clipped. Disdainful. I'm here for a dinner party, I said. At the Davis residence. He scrutinized me, taking in my disheveled appearance, my wet hair, my muddy clothes. He raised an eyebrow. He didn't believe me. I could feel his judgment. A physical weight. He reluctantly buzzed me through. The massive iron gates swung open, slowly, threateningly. The houses in this neighborhood were enormous, brightly lit against the dark, stormy night. They weren't homes. They were monuments. Monuments to wealth, to status, to everything I wasn't. I finally found the address. A sprawling, modern house. All glass and sharp angles, cold, impersonal. It looked like a museum. Several expensive cars were arrayed in the circular driveway. Mercedes, BMWs, a Lexus. I noticed a familiar black sedan tucked away near the side entrance. It belonged to David Chen, Kevin's business partner. A shark in a cheap suit, just like Kevin. My truck didn't belong here. I didn't belong here. I parked my truck on the street, hoping to hide it from view, hoping to hide myself. I started the long walk up the driveway. The gravel crunched under my ruined shoes, loudly, announcing my arrival. I felt small, dirty, completely out of place. The rain was slowed to a drizzle, but I was already soaked. I reached the front door, a massive oak structure, frosted glass panels. I could hear the sounds of the dinner party from inside, soft classical music, the clinking of glasses, polite laughter, the sound of a world I was about to disrupt. I hesitated. I should just leave. Go home. Avoid the humiliation waiting inside. I could apologize to Emily tomorrow. Tell her I got sick. Tell her anything but the truth. But if I didn't show up at all, they'd say I didn't care enough to try. They'd say I abandoned her. I had to face them. For Emily. I took a deep breath, wiped my sweaty palms on my already ruined trousers, and rang the doorbell. The laughter stopped. Abruptly, the music faded slightly. Silence. Heavy. Expectant. The door swung open. It was Kevin. He was wearing a perfectly tailored black tuxedo. His hair was slicked back. He held a crystal glass of wine. His polished smile vanished. Instantly, his eyes traveled slowly from my muddy shoes, up my soaked and stained suit, to my dripping wet hair. He didn't say anything for a long moment. The silence stretched, tense, uncomfortable. His expression morphed, shock, then disgust, pure, unadulterated disgust. George, he hissed. He looked back over his shoulder nervously, into the house. What in the world happened to you? His voice was low, sharp, like a knife. I'm sorry, Kevin. I know I'm very late, I started, my voice hoarse, tired. There was an incident on the highway. I had to stop and help. He cut me off. Help? Look at you. He stepped closer, wrinkling his nose. You look like a homeless person who fell in a ditch. He sniffed the air. You smell like wet dog and engine grease. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I stood there, dripping on his expensive marble floor. The shame washed over me, cold, paralyzing. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I couldn't meet his eyes. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was just a mess. Before I could respond, Richard appeared, Kevin's father, a large man, imposing, impeccably dressed. A permanent expression of disapproval etched on his face. Kevin, who is it? Is it Mrs. Hanover? Has she finally arrived? Richard boomed. His voice filled the hallway. Then he saw me. Good God. It's George, Kevin said, his voice tight with fury, barely concealed. I can see that, Richard sneered. He looked me up and down, like I was a piece of rotten meat. Why is he here looking like that? We have guests, Kevin. Important guests. He glared at me, his eyes burning with hatred. The most important guest of your career. The hostility rolled off them. In waves. Hot, suffocating waves. I know how I look. I apologize, I repeated, trying to keep my voice steady, trying to maintain some semblance of dignity. I was helping a woman with a flat tire in the rain. It took longer than I expected. I was explaining myself, defending myself, to these people who despised me. A flat tire? Kevin scoffed, his voice rising now. He didn't care who hurt him. You stopped for a flat tire? Tonight? Do you have any concept of priority? His face was red, twisted with anger. Any idea how important tonight is for me? For this family? Then Richard dropped the bomb, the accusation that cut the deepest. He did it on purpose, Richard declared suddenly. He pointed a finger at me, a thick, accusing finger. He's always resented our success. He wants to sabotage the evening. He stepped closer, his voice dripping with venom, to embarrass us in front of Mrs. Hanover. Sabotage? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was malicious. Cruel. That's absurd, I protested, my voice rising in disbelief, anger replacing the shame. I'm a mechanic. It's what I do. I help people. It's what you are, George, Richard corrected me, his voice filled with contempt. A low-class grease monkey. He leaned in, his breath hot on my face. And tonight you've finally shown your true colors. Low-class grease monkey. The words echoed in the large, empty hallway. I felt a sharp pain in my chest. A physical ache. I had heard these insults before. Subtle jabs, veiled comments. But this open hostility, this raw hatred, it felt sharper, deeper, it felt final. Then I saw her, Emily. She appeared in the hallway, wearing a stunning silver dress. She looked beautiful, like a princess in a castle, but her face was pale. Her eyes were wide with panic. Dad, she whispered, her voice trembling. She saw me. She saw the state I was in, and she didn't smile. She didn't look relieved. She looked horrified. Emily, sweetheart, I said, taking a step forward. Relief washed over me. She would understand. She would defend me. She was my daughter. Kevin put his arm out, blocking me, his hand pressing against my chest. Hard. Don't you dare take another step inside, he hissed. You will not track mud all over the house. You will not ruin this evening. His eyes were cold, dead. Kevin, let him in. He's my father, Emily pleaded, but her voice was weak, hesitant. She wasn't fighting for me. She was begging. I looked at her, waiting, praying for her to stand up to them, to stand up for me. Choose me, Emily. Please. But she just stood there, paralyzed. Fear, embarrassment. She refused to meet my eyes. In that moment, she chose them. She chose their world over me. The realization shattered my heart, broke it into a million pieces, scattered on the cold marble floor. He's a disgrace, Emily, Kevin shouted, turning on her. His voice sharp, cruel. Look at him. Mrs. Hanover will be here any minute. The CEO of the investment firm, the woman who holds the future of my company in her hands. He gestured at me, like I was garbage. What will she think if she sees this? This mess. He wasn't just talking about my clothes. He was talking about me. Then came the ultimatum. The final nail in the coffin. You have to choose, Emily, Kevin continued, his voice cold, final. Either he goes or the dinner is over. And if the dinner is over, so is my deal. He paused, letting the threat hang in the air. Heavy, suffocating. So is this lifestyle you love so much? He was blackmailing her, emotionally blackmailing her, using her fear of losing everything against me. Emily looked at me, her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't move. She didn't speak. Her silence was a betrayal, sharper than any words, louder than any scream. My own daughter was ashamed of me. Susan, Kevin's mother, joined the group. She took one look at me and gasped. A dramatic, exaggerated gasp. She covered her mouth with her jeweled hand. "He cannot stay," Susan said, her voice trembling with indignation. "Richard, make him leave." She wrinkled her nose. "He smells offensive." Offensive! I was offensive to them. The four of them stood there. A wall of judgment. Hostility. My own daughter was among them. Trapped, unwilling to defend me. Unwilling to love me. "I just wanted to apologize for being late," I said, my voice cracking. The fight draining out of me. Defeat settling in. I didn't mean to cause a scene. I was apologizing again. Apologizing for existing. "We don't want your apologies, George," Kevin said, his voice cold and final. "We want you gone. You don't belong here. You never did." He looked me straight in the eye. No remorse. No regret. "You're an anchor dragging us down. An anchor." That's what I was to them. Dead weight. He stepped forward, grabbed my arm. His grip was tight. Painful. "Get out. Now." He started pulling me away from the door, back towards the porch. Like I was trash. Garbage to be disposed of. As he pulled me, I glanced towards the living room. I saw David Chun, Kevin's partner, standing near the window, half hidden by the curtain. He wasn't looking at me with disgust. He was looking at Kevin with pure panic. His face was pale, sweaty. He knew how close they were to the edge. This wasn't just ambition. This was desperation. And I was the scapegoat. "Kevin, stop," Emily cried, tears streaming down her face. But she still didn't move. She didn't stop him. She just watched. "It's for the best, darling," Susan said, putting a comforting arm around Emily. Her eyes remained fixed on me. Disgust. Kevin pulled me out onto the porch, back into the rain. The cold water hit me again, but it felt different this time. It wasn't just rain. It was rejection. Humiliation. "Don't come back until you learn how to behave in polite society," Kevin snarled. He shoved me away, hard. I stumbled, barely catching my balance on the wet stone steps. My injured hand throbbed. My heart ached. "And don't call Emily tonight," Kevin added, his voice dripping with venom. "She's upset enough because of you." He paused, delivering the final blow. "In fact, don't call her at all until we call you." He was cutting me off, isolating me, taking my daughter away from me. He slammed the massive oak door shut. The sound echoed in the quiet night, heavy, final. The lock clicked. I stood there, alone, in the driveway of my daughter's house. The rain plastered the ruined blue suit to my skin. The grease and mud felt like a physical manifestation of their contempt. I looked at the glowing house, full of light, warmth, laughter, and felt utterly empty, hollowed out. They were right. I didn't belong there. I was just a grease monkey, a disgrace, an anchor. A wave of anger surged through me, a desire to storm back in there, to tell them exactly what I thought of their shallow, cruel world, to fight for my daughter, to fight for myself. But the fight had gone out of me. I was too tired, too broken. Defeat felt absolute, heavy, crushing. Tears mixed with the rain on my face. I had never felt so worthless, so utterly alone in my life. If this story is hitting home for you, if you've ever felt judged or looked down upon, please hit the like button and subscribe. It helps more than you know to share these stories. It helps me know I'm not just talking to the wind. I turned slowly, ready to walk back to my old truck, to my empty house, to my lonely life. The walk down the long driveway felt like a funeral procession, my own funeral, but then something happened. Something I never expected. Just as I reached the street, headlights swept across the driveway. A car was pulling up, slowly, cautiously. I recognized it instantly. My heart stopped. It was the dark gray sedan, the one I had repaired on the highway. It was Margaret, and I knew, with sudden, horrifying certainty, who Margaret was. She was Mrs. Hanover, the important guest, The investor, the legend. She parked right behind my truck. She got out of the car. Elegant. Composed. She must have stopped somewhere to freshen up. Her presence radiated authority, power. I froze, mortified. This was the final humiliation. The universe playing a cruel joke. Now she would see me, thrown out like trash. By the very people she was here to meet. I wanted the ground to swallow me whole. I wanted to disappear. The front door of the house flew open again. Kevin, Richard, and Susan rushed out, their faces instantly transformed. The hostility gone, replaced by masks. Fake warmth, welcoming smiles. They practically tripped over themselves rushing down the steps, fawning, groveling. Mrs. Hanover. Welcome. We are so delighted you could make it, Kevin said. His voice smooth, charming, dripping with sincerity he didn't possess. He extended his hand towards her. We were so worried the storm might have delayed you. They didn't even see me. I was invisible again. Margaret ignored his hand completely. Her eyes swept across the scene, the opulent house, the fawning family, and then they landed on me, standing at the edge of the street, soaked, defeated. Her expression changed. Instantly, the elegant composure softened, replaced by genuine concern, recognition. George, she called out, her voice clear, strong, over the sound of the rain. Kevin, Richard, and Susan froze. Their smiles faltered, confusion clouding their faces. They turned to look at me, then back at her, trying to understand. Margaret walked towards me, seemingly unconcerned by the rain, her gaze fixed on me. George, are you all right? Why are you standing out here? You look frozen. I'm fine, Margaret, I mumbled, unable to meet her eyes. I was ashamed of myself, ashamed of my family. Kevin stepped forward, confused, nervous, trying to regain control of the situation, the desperation creeping back into his voice. Mrs. Hanover, you know George. He forced a chuckle. He's my father-in-law. He was just leaving. Just leaving? Like it was my choice. Margaret turned to him, her eyes flashing. Sudden, cold understanding. She looked at me, soaked and dirty, then back at Kevin, Richard, and Susan, dry, impeccably dressed. The contrast was stark, ugly, unmistakable. Know him? She said, her voice sharp, cutting through the tension. This man just saved me. She paused, letting the words sink in. The silence was deafening. I was stranded on the highway, she continued, her voice rising. In this terrible storm, my tire was ruined, my engine overheated, my phone was dead. She walked closer to Kevin, her gaze intense, pinning him in place. He flinched. For over an hour, this man, George Miller, worked in the pouring rain to fix my car. He refused payment. He ruined his suit. He injured himself. She pointed at my bloody knuckles. He is the only reason I am here tonight. Kevin turned pale, the color draining from his face. He looked sick. Richard looked like he was about to faint. His mouth hung open, slack with disbelief. Susan's jaw tightened. The masks were slipping. The truth was coming out. He said he stopped for a flat tire. Kevin stammered, his voice trembling. We thought he was just making excuses. We didn't know it was you. The admission was damning. The realization of their mistake hung heavy in the air. Excuses? Margaret's voice was like ice, cold, hard. And if it wasn't me, if it was just a stranger, does that make his kindness less valuable? They didn't answer. They couldn't. He showed me more integrity and decency in that hour on the highway, she continued, her voice filled with contempt, than I have seen in months of negotiations with your firm. She paused, looking directly at Kevin. In fact, my due diligence team raised several red flags about your company's ethics and financial stability, Mr. Davis. I was hesitant to come tonight. The numbers looked suspicious. The confirmation of my fears about Kevin's finances hit me hard. Anna was right. He was desperate. A fraud. She turned back to me. Why were they making you stand out here, George? Why didn't they let you inside? I couldn't speak. I just looked down at my muddy shoes. The shame was still there. But something else was rising within me, a sense of vindication, justice. But Margaret understood. She saw the shame in my eyes, the hostility in theirs, the truth of the situation. They threw you out, didn't they? She whispered, horrified, disgusted. She turned back to Kevin and Richard, her face a mask of absolute fury, controlled, terrifying anger. You invited me here tonight to discuss partnership, she said, her voice echoing in the sudden silence, to talk about trust, to convince me that your company, despite the red flags, was worthy of a multi-million-dollar investment. She shook her head slowly. You spoke of ethics, long-term vision, integrity. They were shrinking before my eyes. Small, petty, cruel. Mrs. Hanover, please, let us explain, Richard pleaded, taking a step forward, his hands outstretched, begging. This is a misunderstanding. George can be difficult. Difficult. Even now, they were insulting me, blaming me. Explain what? Margaret demanded. Explain how you treat family. Explain how you judge a man by the stains on his clothes rather than the content of his character. She pointed at me. This man, George, is the definition of integrity. He is decent, honest, and kind. And you treated him like garbage. You humiliated him. Emily appeared in the doorway now, her face streaked with tears. She watched the scene unfold, silent, trembling. I wondered what she was thinking, if she felt relief or regret, if she finally saw them for who they really were. If this is how you treat your own family, Margaret continued, her voice cutting through the night, then I shudder to think how you conduct business, how you treat your employees, how you treat your clients when things get difficult. She looked at Kevin, her expression filled with utter contempt. Character, Mr. Davis, is what you do when you think no one important is watching. And they had failed the test. Spectacularly. The deal is off, Margaret said firmly. I will not be investing in your company. Not now, not ever. I will not associate my name with people like you. Kevin looked devastated. He stumbled back, his face ashen, his world collapsing around him. Mrs. Hinover, please, you can't do this, he begged, his voice breaking. My entire future depends on this deal. We're ruined. It wasn't just expansion. It was a bailout. And he had just blown it. Your future, Mr. Davis, depends on your character, Margaret said. And tonight, you have shown me exactly who you are. A man who values appearances over substance. A man who sacrifices his own family for the sake of ambition. She looked at him with pity. You are not ruined because of this deal falling through. You are ruined because you are empty inside. She turned to Richard and Susan. And you raised him to be this way. Shame on you. They stood there, speechless, their carefully constructed world demolished. In the pouring rain, the silence was heavy, broken only by the sound of the storm, and Susan's quiet sobbing. Margaret turned back to me, her expression softened, instantly the fury replaced by warmth. George, let me take you home, she said gently. You need to get out of these wet clothes. I nodded, unable to find my voice. I felt a strange sense of peace settling over me. I wasn't worthless. I wasn't a disgrace. I was George Miller, and that was enough. I started walking towards her car. As I passed the doorway, I looked at Emily. Our eyes met. Hers were filled with shame, regret, a desperate plea for forgiveness. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Not yet. The silence between us was a conversation. A painful one. I got into Margaret's car. The interior was warm, smelled faintly of leather. As we drove away, I looked back at the house. Kevin, Richard, and Susan were still standing in the driveway, watching us leave, the rain washing away their masks of respectability. Emily stood alone on the porch, watching me go, a solitary figure against the backdrop of the opulent house. The drive home was mostly silent. Margaret didn't press me to talk. She seemed to understand. I needed the quiet to process the events of the evening. The humiliation, the vindication, the loss. When we reached my small, dark house, she pulled into the driveway. Thank you, Margaret, I said, my voice hoarse. For everything. You thanked me already, George, when you fixed my car, she said gently. You are a good man. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. She paused, looked at me thoughtfully, a spark in her eyes. I own a large company, George. We have a fleet of vehicles, over 200 cars and trucks across the state. I listened, confused. Why was she telling me this? We are currently unhappy with our maintenance provider, she continued. They lack transparency and honesty. They overcharge and underdeliver. She smiled. Would you be interested in taking over the contract? I was stunned. A contract like that, it would change everything. For my small shop, financial security, I could hire help. Expand, it was a lifeline, a future. I don't know what to say, I stammered. Overwhelmed? Don't say anything tonight, she said with a warm smile. Think about it. I'll have my assistant call you next week. I nodded. Thank you. I got out of the car and watched her drive away. The rain had stopped. The stars were starting to appear. I went inside my house. It was cold and empty, but it felt like home. It felt safe. I peeled off the ruined blue suit, the symbol of my humiliation. I threw it in the trash. I would never wear it again. I would never pretend to be something I wasn't. I took a long, hot shower, scrubbing the grease and mud off my skin. The hot water stung my raw knuckles, but it felt good, healing, cleansing. But the stains on my hands remained. They always did. And for the first time in a long time, I was okay with that. I put on my old, comfortable clothes, jeans and a flannel shirt, and sat in the living room, listening to the silence. I felt exhausted, but also strangely light. I had lost my daughter tonight, perhaps, but I had regained my self-respect, my dignity, and that was worth more than any investment. The next few days were quiet. I didn't call Emily, and she didn't call me. I needed time to heal, to think. I focused on my work at the shop. I called Mr. Peterson, my landlord. I went through my accounts with a fine-tooth comb. Kevin had indeed been skimming, diverting funds. Not enough to ruin me, but enough to show his true character. I didn't press charges. I just took back control. The news about Margaret's offer gave me a renewed sense of purpose. I started making plans, organizing my books, preparing for the future. My future, on Thursday afternoon, I was working on an old Ford Mustang. The smell of oil and gasoline filling the air, my favorite smell. I was deep in the engine. Then I heard the bell above the shop door ring. I slid out from under the car, stood up, wiping my hands on a rag. It was Emily. She was alone. She wasn't wearing an expensive dress. No heavy makeup. She was wearing jeans and an old sweater, one I recognized from her college days. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. She looked like my daughter again. She looked like Sarah. She stood there, nervously shifting her weight. Her hairs were red, puffy. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. In her hand she held a small, worn suitcase. My heart pounded in my chest. Hope, fear, we stared at each other. A long moment. The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken words, pain, hope. Finally, she spoke, her voice trembling. Hi, Dad. Hi, sweetheart, I said, my voice rough with emotion. Tears welled up in her eyes. She dropped the suitcase, rushed forward, threw her arms around me. I'm so sorry, Dad, she sobbed, burying her face in my shoulder, clinging to me like she was a little girl again. I'm so sorry for how I treated you, for how I let them treat you, for everything. I held her tightly, stroking her hair, the tears finally breaking through my own defenses. It's okay, honey. It's okay, I whispered. We're okay. It's not okay, she cried, pulling back to look at me, her face streaked with tears. They were horrible to you, cruel, and I just stood there. I didn't defend you. She paused, shame washing over her. I was ashamed of you. The words hurt, but they were honest. They were the truth. I was so caught up in their world, Dad, she confessed. The money, the status, the pressure to be perfect. I forgot who I was. I forgot what really mattered. She looked down, her voice trembling. I forgot, Mom. I know, Emily. I know, I said gently, wiping her tears away with my greasy thumb. It left a smudge on her cheek. She didn't pull away, she leaned into it. Kevin is ruined, she said, her voice hollow. When the deal fell through, everything collapsed. His company was built on smoke and mirrors. Lies. He was leveraged to the hilt. David Chen is suing him for fraud. She revealed the depth of their deception. They were broke, desperate. His parents blamed me. She continued, a look of clarity in her eyes. They said I ruined everything by being your daughter. She shook her head, but Mrs. Hanover was right. They ruined themselves. I left him, Dad. I called Anna. She's handling the divorce. The relief I felt was overwhelming. She was safe. She was free. She was home. She looked around the shop, at the tools hanging on the walls, at the cars waiting for repair, at the life I had built. This is real, she said, her voice filled with newfound respect. This is honest. You built this with Mom. You built our life with those hands. She took my hands in hers, looking at the stains, the calluses, the permanent map of my life, the same way her mother used to. I used to be so proud of these hands, she whispered. I don't know how I forgot that. I love you, Emily, no matter what, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I love you too, Dad. She looked at the suitcase on the floor. Dad, can I come home? I smiled, the tears blurring my vision, but my heart felt full, for the first time in years. This is your home, sweetheart. It always has been. There's always room for you here. Emily moved back in that day. The house felt alive again, full of laughter, full of love. A few weeks later, I signed the contract with Margaret Sink. My small auto shop started growing. I hired new mechanic. I even saw Anna, Emily's friend, who smiled when she saw us together again. Told you so, she winked. But that wasn't the biggest change. The biggest change was having my daughter back. One evening, I was sitting on the porch, watching the sunset. The sky painted shades of orange and purple. Emily came out and sat next to me, handing me a cup of coffee. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the colors fade into night. I looked down at my hands. They were still stained with grease, but they weren't the hands of a disgrace. They weren't the hands of an anchor. They were the hands of a mechanic, a father, a survivor. They were the hands that built a life, and sometimes when things break down completely, whether cars or families, they were the hands that put them back together. Thanks for listening to the end. If this story touched your heart, please rate it in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. Your support means the world, because your time matters.